When you're scrolling through a sea of sheet metal brakes, the cheap models that promise lightweight flexibility often end up feeling like a paper-thin compromise once you try to bend a real-world panel. I've seen friends spend a weekend wrestling with a flimsy brake only to discover the clamps lose grip on the very first curve, leaving them with wasted material and a dented ego. The question is whether the Baileigh BB9616M actually saves you from that regret or just adds another line item to the shop budget. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Most of the hesitation around buying a brake like this comes from two places: the fear of overpaying for a machine you'll only use a few times a year, and the opposite fear of buying a bargain that can't handle the thicker gauge you need for structural work. In a workshop where you're pulling 18-gauge steel for HVAC ducts and 10-gauge for custom brackets, you can't afford a brake that slips or forces you to re-bend a piece twice. That's why I dug into the specs, read the limited reviews, and imagined the day-to-day workflow before hitting record. At its core, the Baileigh BB9616M is a manually actuated magnetic sheet metal brake with an 8-foot working length. That length alone sets it apart from the more common 4-foot units you see in entry-level shops. The electromagnetic clamping system means you lock the sheet in place with a push of a button, and the magnetic field holds it steady while you pull the bending leaf through. Because it's not powered by a hydraulic pump, the machine feels almost like a precision hand tool, but with the reliability of an industrial clamp. If you run a small to medium fabrication shop, a custom metal art studio, or a contractor's on-site shop that frequently bends ducts, brackets, or decorative panels, this brake fits nicely into that workflow. The 8-foot span lets you handle full-size sheets without having to splice or pre-cut, which saves both time and material waste. The manual operation also means you get a direct feel for the metal as it bends, letting you fine-tune angles that a purely hydraulic unit might overshoot. For anyone who needs repeatable bends on medium-thick stock and appreciates the tactile feedback, the BB9616M feels like a purposeful upgrade from a cheap, low-capacity brake. On the flip side, if you're a weekend hobbyist who only bends a couple of 24-gauge sheets a month, the machine's footprint and power requirements could be overkill. The unit runs on a dedicated 220-volt single-phase line, which many home garages don't have without installing a new circuit. Its base and frame occupy roughly the space of a large workbench, so a cramped shop might struggle to find a suitable spot. In those cases, a smaller, 4-foot manual brake or even a portable hydraulic model might make more sense financially and spatially. One of the practical strengths that shows up when you actually use the brake is the electromagnetic clamp's ability to hold the sheet without any mechanical fingers digging into the metal. That means you can work with thin, painted, or even slightly corroded material without worrying about surface damage. I imagined a scenario where you're fabricating a custom storefront canopy. You'd lay a full-width aluminum panel on the bed, engage the magnetic hold, and then pull the bending leaf to create a graceful curve all in one smooth motion. The magnet releases cleanly, so you don't have to pry or fight with stubborn clamps, which is a subtle time saver that adds up over dozens of parts. The manual actuation also has a practical downside. Because the bending leaf is moved by a hand-operated lever, you still need a decent amount of physical effort to form tighter radii, especially on thicker gauges. The leverage ratio is respectable, but a user who isn't accustomed to the rhythm of a manual brake will feel a learning curve. In a busy shop where you're processing multiple bends per hour, that extra effort can translate into slightly longer cycle times compared to a fully hydraulic system that does the heavy lifting for you. Another hidden trade-off is the reliance on a solid 220-volt supply. The machine's motor runs the electromagnetic coil, and if your workshop's power is unstable, the clamp's holding force can fluctuate. I'd recommend pairing the brake with a dedicated circuit breaker and, if possible, a line conditioner. That way you avoid the occasional magnet flicker that can happen when voltage dips under load, which would otherwise cause a slip at the start of a bend and potentially ruin a piece. Maintenance on the Baileigh isn't overly complex, but it does require a bit of routine attention. The magnetic coil can accumulate metal shavings over time, so a quick brush down after each shift keeps the contact surfaces clean and ensures consistent holding force. The manual lever mechanism benefits from occasional lubrication on the pivot points, especially if you operate in a dusty environment. I've seen shop owners who neglect this small upkeep end up with a stiff lever that makes the manual effort feel heavier than the original design intended. When you weigh the price tag against the